Hi everyone, it's Miss Gascho here. We are starting our 6th unit today. So it is all about right triangles. The guided notes will be on pages 13 and 14, and your practice will be on page 15. This series will kind of be in chunks of videos so that you don't have to watch the entire thing at once. So the very beginning, before we even start, this is important information to understand. So when we square a number, squaring means we multiply itself. So for example, 1 squared is 1 times 1, which hopefully we know is just 1. 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9, and so on and so forth. So when we have been mathematicians, we are used to doing the inverse of things or undoing things. So we know that undoing multiplication would be through division. Undoing adding is through subtracting. Well, undoing squaring is a square root. So this hopefully looks somewhat familiar to you, which means that the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3, because we're looking at what times itself is that number. So as you can see, there's these numbers in between because we go from 1 to 4 to 9. So if I were to look at, for example, the number 12, 12 is going to be somewhere in between 3 and 4, or I should say the square root of 12. So to access this, you'll want a calculator. If you are using your phone, be careful of how the different operations work. Sometimes phones can be rough. Maybe download an app. Otherwise, your Chromebook has a calculator. Mine is right here, but yours probably won't be. So when you open up the apps, you'll scroll down to the second page and calculator should be there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And when I want the square root, if you look, there's that little blue symbol right there. When it's that little corner, we hit the second button and it shows the arrow, and then we can access our square root. So the square root of 12 is 3.464, which we said should be in between 3 and 4, which makes sense. So we are going to be dealing with non-whole numbers for some of this unit. So here is the opener at the very top of page 13. It says to solve the following equations. So number 1, the variable is x. We want x by itself. Everything else is away. So the only thing we can do to get rid of that squared is take the square root. So x equals the square root of 16. And you might remember from that page before, or we can check it on our calculator, that the square root of 16 is a whole number, 4. So in this case, x equals 4. You might remember from algebra 1 that technically the square root of a number is the positive and minus of it. So technically it's plus or minus 4. There's 2 answers. However, in geometry, we're going to be using square roots to measure things, and we can't have a negative measurement. So we're only going to worry about the positive. Try number 2 on your own, and then pause the video, unpause it when you're ready to go over. Number 2, you were solving for the letter C, and to get it by itself, you had to take the square root. So in my calculator, I'm going to take the square root of 39, 6.2449, and the direction stayed around to the nearest thousandth, which is 3 decimal points. So 6.244, but the number behind it is a 5 or bigger, so my 4 is going to go up to a 5. If it was less than a 5 behind it, let's say it was 6.2443, then I would just leave it as 6.244. But since it's a big number, it's going to round up. And the last one on this page is now different because if I draw my line, I don't just have something squared. I have a plus 17. So I have to undo adding, and to do that, I'll subtract. So I have x squared equals 36 minus 17, which is 19. And then now I can take the square root. So x will equal whatever the square root of 19 is. We're rounding to 3 decimal points, so 4.358, but the number behind it is too big, so I'm going to change that 8 to a 9. Oop, I made a mistake. Three more to go over in our opener. So number 4 is a very unique one because they have numbers that are squared. So I could use my calculator for these. I'm going to show you 2 ways to do number 4. The first one is the long way. So 4 squared is technically 4 times 4, which I know is 16. B squared I can't change at all. And 5 squared I know is 5 times 5, which is 25. If I'm not sure, I can also hit the squared button up here. So 4 squared, I just have to hit those 2 buttons, and that gives me my 16. From here, I can subtract 16 from both sides because I want b by itself. That's the variable I'm solving for. So b squared equals whatever 25 minus 16 is. And now that I have b squared by itself, I can take the square root of both sides, and I get b equals 3. That's the long way. The short way is that 4 squared is still a number, even though it's not simplified. So when I want b by itself, I can just subtract 4 squared from both sides. And in my calculator, I would type in 5 squared minus 4 squared. So 5 squared minus 4 squared equals 9. So now I know that b squared equals 9, and I can take the square root just like last time and get b equals 3. The thing you have to be careful of is that 5 minus 4, 5 squared minus 4 squared, you can't just do 5 minus 4 and square it, because that only gives us 1, and we know that the correct answer should be 9. So you have to be really careful and type it in this way, otherwise that method won't work. So you might want to do the longer method if you're worried about getting stuck on those. For number 5, pause the video and try that on your own. You are solving for x, and x is almost by itself on that side of the equation. So we could just type in 6 squared plus 7 squared on our calculator. That could be the short way we do it. 6 squared plus 7 squared equals 85. Or we could have done, we know that 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49, and so we could have done it that way instead. 36 plus 49 equals 85. Either way, we get the same exact thing. So it's up to you how comfortable you are with your calculator and the understanding. It's whatever makes the most sense to you. Not whatever is easiest, but what makes the most sense. So 85 equals x squared. And since all we have left on the right side of the equation is that squared, we'll take the square root of both sides. So the square root of 85 is 9.219. So if we are rounding to the nearest hundredth, this is a weird situation that we have because 9.2195, so we want to go only to this place, but this number makes it go up. 9 can only go up to a 0, which means we also need to make this number go up. So our final answer will be 9.220 equals x. But we need that 0 there as the placeholder to let us know that we rounded to the nearest thousandth. All right, and the last one, try that on your own. Pause the video to check unpause it when you're ready to check. So the first thing we need to do is subtract from 19 on both sides. So we're left with a squared equals 81. And then we can take the square root of both sides. 81, the square root gives us a whole number, which ends up being 9. If we were true to rounding to the nearest thousandth, then we could say it's 9.000. But I think your teachers will accept if it's a whole number to just leave it as that whole number.